Good evening to you from Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. My name is Reagan Devines. Before we begin, a look at this evening's headlines. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro calls for the world to embrace a new kind of anti-imperialist politics.
Simón Bolívar.
Cuban President Raul Castro meets with U.S. President Barack Obama as Cuba remains firm on calling for the end of the U.S. blockade. And 3 protesters shot dead by police as they demonstrated against a huge mining project. These stories and more now on From the South. Thank you for being here with us. We begin with President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, who called for a new type of anti-imperialist politics during his address to the United Nations General Assembly. He lauded the United Nations as a victory for the human race for pursuing a dream of inclusiveness and dialogue, but also accused the body of an inability to act when needed. Maduro pointed out that the current style of geopolitics is destroying the Middle East. He said that in countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya and Syria, it had wrought destruction, devastation and terrorism. Maduro also backed the plan of Russian President Vladimir Putin for peace in Syria.
Humanity is on time to make a new peace alliance. We support Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin's proposal to make a new peace alliance. And from the Security Council, Venezuela, a non-permanent member, will make a proposal to work, talk and to go and protect the Syrian people.
And on Monday night, President Maduro met with leaders from the black community in Harlem, discussing various issues including police brutality and structural racism. During his speech, President Maduro highlighted the need to form a new radical consciousness of humanism in efforts to combat racial inequalities. Reports are that his speech was well received by all those who attended.
So I was really pleased with the words that President Maduro shared with us today. It was really heartening to know that there was a head of state out there who really stood alongside oppressed people, black people from all across the globe.
He's committed to working for the people, and that is very refreshing to hear that kind of language in the United States.
Raul Castro and Barack Obama met on the margins of the General Assembly on Monday. The presidents of Cuba and the United States did not give any statement to the media, but as Cuba's foreign minister later explained, the heads of state discussed the renewed relationship between their two countries. During their speeches at the assembly, both leaders spoke of the need to lift the blockade imposed by the U.S. on the island. Castro also demanded that the U.S. abandon Cuba's occupied territory at Guantanamo Bay.
The Cuban president reiterated that for Cuba and the United States to be able to have normal relations, the blockade or embargo that has caused damages and hardships to the Cuban people and affects the interests of American citizens should be lifted, and the territory occupied by the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo should be returned to Cuba.
Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos lauded the recent deal between his government and the FARC rebel group during his speech at the UN General Assembly. Santos said the country was finally on the path to peace after over 50 years of internal conflict. Santos and the top FARC commander, Rodrigo Londoño, pledged last week to end the conflict within the next 6 months.
Why do I say today I come here more optimistic than ever to this assembly? Because less than 1 week ago in Cuba and Havana, after more than almost 3 years of negotiations in which we have advanced on a majority of points of the agenda, an agreement was successfully reached regarding what was perhaps the largest obstacle to reach peace.
And in a fiery speech given on Monday night, Argentine President Cristina Fernandez asked the UN Assembly to think about how conflicts are financed and started, but she also praised recent gains made in Latin America.
It would be good to ask who is financing all of this. That would certainly help the world to find the best ways to fight one of the worst problems facing humanity, which fundamentalism of any kind. Religious dogmatism, and especially those who think of their neighbors as enemies, to be eliminated. But I don't want to leave this assembly only with problems of debt, the economy, terrorist attacks, and international complicity. I want to leave you also with a tribute to the continent that I feel myself a child of, Latin America.
And Uruguayan President Tabaré Vázquez lashed out at tobacco giant Philip Morris and defended his country's sovereign decisions over public health. Philip Morris is attempting to sue Uruguay for $25 million. Uruguay has some of the strictest anti-tobacco laws, including a complete ban on smoking in enclosed public spaces, as well as a ban on tobacco advertising.
It is unethical, ladies and gentlemen, that in some circumstances that the courts of the multinational organizations can prioritize trade issues over fundamental human rights, such as health and life. And this is what Uruguay is going through, a powerful international tobacco company, which today, to only say the short of it so as to not harm anything that is sensitive. Philip Morris has brought an international complaint against Uruguay for bringing up the issue of controlling tobacco to the World Health Organization.
Peruvian police have killed 3 demonstrators who were protesting against a copper mine in the remote Andean region of Cotabambas. Activists broke into the mine to demand that they adhere to an environmental plan when police started to fire tear gas. According to a doctor who assisted the injured, 10 of them had bullet wounds. Peru is the world's 3rd biggest copper producer and is expected to nearly double the output of the metal in coming years. The Cotabambas mine is expected to dig up 400,000 tons each year. Also in Peru, a great deal of controversy has arisen following the release of insurgents who joined the armed struggle against the state 2 decades ago. Telesur's Rael Mora is in Lima and he filed this report.
Bernardo Roque was a member of revolutionary movement Tupac Amaru, better known as MRTA, which was one of the groups that took up arms against the Peruvian state in the 80s and 90s. He was sentenced for crimes against the state and served a 15-year prison term. After renouncing to the use of violence, Roque was released from prison in 2008, but he is confronted with a society that condemns him.
Everyone, from a simple combatant up to the comrades from the highest commands, have assumed their responsibility in this process of, let's call it, violence. And we have paid with our liberty and with very hard years of imprisonment, and many continue to pay, still like in the naval base. So that is the payment for the mistakes that we made.
The recent release of another former MRTA member, Peter Cardenas, after he served a 25-year sentence, has caused a media and public outcry. Analysts claim that the disapproval of those who took up arms in Peru is a generalized reaction against the Shining Path, the other armed movement in those decades.
Shining Path is a subversive Maoist phenomenon that does not happen in any other country in the region, with the violent component very exacerbated, very ideological. That ends up confronting directly the people, and even the left. Therefore, this is one of the elements that explains why this environment is so different than others.
Such environment contrasts with how in other countries of the region, those who took up arms are integrated into society, and some even hold important political posts. Nevertheless, the situation is such that few predict a change in perspective in Peru in the coming years. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
Ecuador's National Assembly paid homage to the 5 Cuban counter-terrorists known as the Cuban Five, as well as a Cuban military official who was incarcerated in Somalia for 11 years. The parliament awarded the Cuban Five and Colonel Oscar Cardoso, who will later attend a floral offering at the Jose Marti Monument in Quito. Their schedule also includes a public discussion at the International Center for Advanced Studies in Communications for Latin America. On Monday, they met with Cuban solidarity groups. Their Ecuador visit ends on Sunday, after which they will be traveling to Bolivia. And the Mexican volcano of Colima continues to spew ashes into the air. The volcano erupted on Monday evening and again on Tuesday morning when 3 spectacular consecutive explosions were recorded. Incandescent fragments were launched into the air the day before, as well as gases and ash. The smoke rose some 2 kilometers into the air. The Colima volcano has been active since July this year. Bolivian pro-choice activists have called on the government to decriminalize abortion. September 28th was designated a global day of action to highlight the issue. Every day, 185 illegal abortions take place in Bolivia, as our correspondent Dimitri O'Donnell revealed from La Paz.
En Bolivia, el 23% de los niños y niñas...
Taking a stand for the rights of Bolivian women. A small but determined group of activists took to the streets of La Paz as part of the September 28th campaign, a global day of action to decriminalize abortion around the world.
We are asking for abortion to be taken off the penal code. This is more than policy, it's about public health. For women seeking an abortion, they need to have access to health insurance and other free services.
It's estimated that 185 illegal abortions take place in Bolivia every day, the second highest rate in Latin America, with Haiti taking the top spot.
Those women are probably poor women, indigenous women, peasant women, who cannot pay a safe abortion in some other clinics.
The activists want the government to decriminalize abortion, but that's no easy task in a country with a strong Catholic tradition where a majority are against terminations. Bolivian law allows women an abortion only if the fetus poses a risk to the life of the mother or they have been raped.
Definitely. The most serious circumstances for women is sexual abuse. We've seen an increase of sexual abuse, and the consequences of this is, of course, becoming pregnant.
7 out of every 10 women here have suffered sexual abuse at least once in their lives. If they fall pregnant and go to an illegal clinic, the risks are huge. Maternal deaths because of illegal abortions is the 3rd highest cause of death for Bolivian women. This group estimates that between 50 and 60,000 illegal abortions are carried out in unsafe, so-called backstreet clinics every year in Bolivia. And every day 2 women die here because of an illegal abortion. They say it's now time the government acts decisively to stop more women dying. Dimitri O'Donnell, Telesur, La Paz.
Coming up on From the South, the civil war in Syria rages on while politicians meet at the UN General Assembly. We have the details on this story and much more next.
A world infinitely connected. Millions of people instantaneously interacting. Experiences relayed in 144 characters. Millions of lives in every corner of the planet. They're not tweets, they're stories. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
The US in crisis. What's it like for the people on the ground? The real USA. Only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there. From London, an interpretation of current world politics as presented by the activist, writer and historian Tariq Ali.
The emergence of the United States as a global empire.
The world today, only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Welcome back, thanks for sticking with us. Jeremy Corbyn, the new leader of Britain's Labour Party, promised to put kindness back into politics during his first party's annual conference in Brighton. The opposition leader also pledged to go against what he called the UK's misogynistic and abusive politics. Corbyn said that he aims to set out a new policy for the self-employed, including statutory sick and maternity pay. He also wants to tackle social inequality and reiterated his position against heavy spending on nuclear weapons, as well as his stance to nationalise railways.
Any chance we can start? I believe in coming together we achieve more than we can do on our own. Basically, it's about fair play for all. It's an old fundamental, really. Solidarity and not walking by on the other side of the street while people are in trouble. Respect for other people's point of view. It's that sense of fair play, these shared majority values in Britain that are a fundamental reason why I love this country and its people. These are the values that I was elected on: a kinder politics, a more caring society. These are Labour values. They're our country's values. And we're going to put these values back into the heart of politics in this country.
Taylor Swift also recently spoke to Jeremy Corbyn, who expressed that enforcing the rights of British workers should be extended to all workers across the world.
Often, those that come from the poorer countries in Eastern Europe are grossly exploited in Western Europe, in France, in Germany, in Belgium, Netherlands, and in Britain. And that is something that's got to stop. We want all workers treated properly, all workers paid at the very least the minimum wage, all workers entitled to the same level of protection. That is a big debate, but we are there saying there has to be a universality of conditions.
Catalonian President Artur Mas has been summoned to appear in court on October 15th to defend himself on accusations of civil disobedience for conducting a non-binding referendum on Catalan sovereignty in November last year. Mas, along with two other members of his government, have also been accused of usurping authority and of the misuse of public funds in the controversial vote. If found guilty, Mas could be barred from public office for up to 15 years. 10 years, rather.
If it's to mess with members of the government or myself, even presenting legal complaints, etc., then go ahead and do it. I am calm in the sense that we are defending democracy, we are defending freedom, we are defending fundamental rights, which under minimum normal circumstances should not be denied to anyone.
And in an interview with reporters, Mas's allies expressed their support for the Catalan leader.
This shows the central state's political cowardice, giving a political issue, which is not only in the Catalan agenda, but in the international agenda as well, a criminal status. We want to express our solidarity with President Mas, with former Vice President Joana Ortega and Councillor Irene Rigau by reporting this. With no doubt, this is a political lawsuit.
While addressing the United States Senate, former UK Foreign Secretary David Miliband said that letting in just over 1,800 Syrians is not befitting of the US as a global leader. Miliband is now president and CEO of the International Rescue Committee, an organization that helps war-torn civilians survive, recover, and gain control of their future. According to Miliband, the US should do more to help the people of Syria who are risking their lives to get to Europe. While world leaders meet at the UN General Assembly in New York, video posted online showed the aftermath of airstrikes and barrel bombs in Syria. Both Damascus and Homs were attacked by the regime just one day after Russia and the United States agreed to look for a diplomatic end to the 4-year civil war. On Monday, at a panel held by the United Nations, Executive Director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, urged the international community to put an end to President Bashar al-Assad's indiscriminate use of the bombs. He said that the tactic also undermines the war against the Islamic State group. And Presidents Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin met on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly on Monday, with Syria at the center of their concerns. The Russian leader showed his determination to support Syria, while his US counterpart expressed contradictory opinions, sometimes coinciding with the Russian position and sometimes against it. All this while the conflict inside Syria continues unabated. Here is Hazem Abdullah with more.
The Syrian crisis dominates the activities of the world leaders at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The most permanent was a meeting between Presidents Obama and Putin. It felt a bit like a Cold War, but in another form. No definitive conclusions about the Syrian crisis came out of their talks, but it certainly pointed the way to what might happen in the coming weeks or months, according to many observers.
The United States has tried to control the region, but its unilateral policy is collapsing. Russia has emerged as a counterweight, and Russia understands how serious Western support for the terrorists has been. Sometimes this has been disguised as support for moderates or as an attempt to bring down the government. But this terror will strike the whole world, and not just Syria. The fact is, the world is changing today, and several polls are emerging. The changes may not be rapid on the ground, but the results will appear soon.
The French have taken their own initiative, with President Francis Hollande refloating the idea of a buffer zone, or safe zone as they call it, as a solution to the refugee crisis. At the same time, a French parliamentary delegation has been in Damascus to meet the government and visit several other Syrian cities.
They are raising this in case there is an attack on Syrian territory, and it's unacceptable. The French and others are starting to feel the crisis is nearing its end, and they are trying to play the last card that may serve their interests. But their card table will soon be overturned, and we will see a solution to the crisis, especially with the support of friends around the world.
On the ground, the extremist seems undaunted by all these. The terror organization of Islam Army published a video that shows its fighters training and carrying out exercises in large numbers. Hazem Abdullah, TV2, Syria.
Ongoing confrontations between Palestinians and Israeli forces over the Al-Aqsa Mosque have led to clashes across the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. While women have not faced any age restrictions, since Monday, Palestinian men under the age of 50 have been barred from visiting the mosque. The mosque is the third holiest site for Muslims, while many Jews refer to it as the Temple Mount and regard it as a holy site themselves. Reports indicate that there were dozens of injuries, including at least 7 wounded in demonstrations near Ramallah. President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, will deliver an historic speech at the UN General Assembly on Wednesday. Here is Noor Harazin with the latest.
The President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, is planned to address the United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Palestine's local time. A few weeks back, the 80-year-old man threatened to drop a bombshell, meaning cancelling the Oslo Accords, dissolving the Palestinian Authority, and declaring Palestine an occupied state if Israel keeps violating agreements and turning its back to all peace obligations. The threat sent a message to Israel that it could no longer be a partner for peace if its current policies towards the Palestinian people, including settlement expansion in the West Bank and violations at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem, continued. However, many believe Arabs won't finally bring up the issue.
First of all, bombshells need preparations. These preparations are unavailable right now. Therefore, the speech will be a regular one. It will describe the current situation and hold Israel responsible for it. It will include complaints about the stalled peace process, but there are also many probabilities in the light of the meetings which were held over the past days and the pressures that were exerted on the Palestinian leadership. I do not expect the speech to declare Palestine a state under occupation.
Meanwhile, several analysts say that Abbas has only 2 options left. Either his speech is strong enough to express the directives of his people and the decisions of the national associations, or it backs the stances of his weak political kitchen and drops its roundabout policy as an exit for his trouble. However, the ordinary Palestinian citizens seems unworried about the outcome of the speech and more likely expect President Abbas neither to escalate the matters and deliver sharp statements nor to take unilateral steps towards the occupation states. Noor Harazin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
And now a brief of other stories making news around the world.
With a counsel for Mr.
Congolese former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba, along with 4 close associates, are facing charges of bribing witnesses in a war crimes case against him at the International Criminal Court. Bemba is accused of masterminding a network from his prison cell to bribe at least 14 defense witnesses in his main trial to give false evidence. This may not be the end of trouble in Burkina Faso. On Monday, the interim government accused the elite presidential guard behind this month's week-long coup that started on September 16th of seizing soldiers, refusing to disarm, and of planning even more trouble. Agents from the Transport Inspectorate raided Uber's European headquarters in Amsterdam. The raid was part of a criminal investigation into whether or not the ride-sharing service is offering illegal taxi services. The company is currently challenging a court ruling that found its service violates Dutch law. Greenpeace took to the streets to celebrate that international oil giant Shell has pulled the plug on Arctic drilling. The Save the Arctic campaign started by Greenpeace has seen protests all over the world against it.
Because these big corporations, whether it's Shell, whether it's VW, think that with money, with power, with lobbying, with fraud, with corruption, that they can dictate the future of this planet. But we, the people, increasingly are saying, no, you can't. And we, the people, are increasingly winning that battle.
Swiss authorities have authorized the extradition request for ex-Costa Rican Football Federation President Eduardo Lee. Lee is the 4th official who is due to be sent to the United States in connection with the FIFA corruption scandal. The U.S. Department of Justice issued an arrest warrant in May for the Costa Rican national. The department has accused him of taking bribes in connection with the sale of marketing rights for World Cup 2018 qualifying games. And our final story takes us to Egypt, where British archaeologist Nicholas Reeves is claiming that Queen Nefertiti's tomb is located in the Valley of the Kings site. Reeves visited the site in an attempt to prove his theory after publishing a paper with the findings of his investigation earlier this year. Reeves believes that the Queen's tomb is actually hidden behind the tomb of a young king who died around the year 1322 BC. Reeves will hold a press conference on October 1st in Cairo to announce the findings of his visit and investigation. And as usual, there is more on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English, from our news teams in Quito, Ecuador, and right here in Caracas, Venezuela. My name is Reagan Devines. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Have a great evening.